So in order to talk about writing, we've got to talk about a couple things. So last time we talked about this idea both of AI being better than average, but not the best experts. In other words, it's a C student in some ways. It's getting better. But if you, the coders are calling this the 70% problem, which means if I know nothing about code, which is true, it was punch cards when I last took computer science, I can ask Claude Code to design a 3D video game that asks students what period in history they want to go to, and then gives me a city in that period, and boom, it writes the code, it runs the thing, and I get a video game that students can play. So I can do that without knowing anything about code, anything about 3D animation, and you should try this. You should get it to, ask Claude Code or one of these things to do this. But of course, I can't make it better. I mean, I could ask, say, oh, I think the buildings don't look right for the 16th century. I mean, I could, use my expertise, but I don't have any expertise on coding. I can't, or video games. I can't say, it needs to be able to do this because I'm not an expert. But I can get a workable prototype. I can get a C essay, a passable essay using AI. And so that creates this weird problem where we need students to be experts, but they can get 70% of the way there without. So the basics that they used to say, well, I got to slog through this to get to that. So AI is creating a very strange situation. But the other way to think about this is that AI isn't just average. It's better because it's customized. So think about greeting cards, right? At the moment, you want a greeting card for Aunt Mildred. You go to the store, you buy a generic greeting card, and you write, "Dear Aunt Mildred," etc. But what we're now going to see is that business, Hallmark, et cetera, is going to go out of business because it'll be print on demand in the same way that the places that printed your photos, right? It's just that's changed. So now we'll say, look, Aunt Mildred likes parakeets and plays the ukulele. I'd like a customized poem and an image. Here are some pictures of us. Make me a greeting card that Aunt Mildred will like that's customized. Another version of this is the song, right? And so I used there are a couple of different models. Suno is the one that's best known, but I kind of like Refusion because Suno's a little bit straight down the middle, and Refusion's a little bit less normal. It takes the path often a little bit less ordinary. So, for example, this is a song that I asked Refusion to write a few minutes ago about this workshop.
I walked into the room that day.
Here it has the lyrics. Here, guys, can you tell me if you can't hear
Not
this?
sure what I was gonna say.
Can you hear and see?
He stood there with a knowing smile. Said, let me show you something
I
worthwhile.
didn't write these lyrics.
Teaching felt so hard lately. Two words they
Definitely
moved
did
me
not write
deeply.
that.
Jose, who opened up my mind to a future I could finally find. We're teaching tomorrow, today.
But so this is not the best song you've ever heard.
Finding a
But
whole
it's
new
customized, right? In fact, part of what I like about Refusion, the other version it did for me included a verse in Spanish, right? So the prompt is just, a teaching with AI workshop by Jose Bowen, et cetera. So we went to a dinner party with somebody. She's a wonderful host, and so I normally send her a thank you. But this time I sent her a song about what a wonderful host she is in the style of her favorite singer. And it was customized, right? So you should also try this with things like a bedtime story. So you can do this here, right? I've asked, here is the prompt that I've given ChatGPT, right? You hit the microphone, and I asked a story about Darren, my 8-year-old. I don't have an 8-year-old. This is a grandchild. Bedtime story about pirates, but I want him to be the hero, right? I can also do this with Hume or one of these other programs. So I am going to go. This is Hume.ai. I want to talk to the personalities. I'm going to pick a male voice because the women's are all a little too flirty. Gives me a choice of model. I start it, says, can I use the microphone? Yes, I can. Open the app. And now I have a couple of different things. Again, you can do this in ChatGPT. but I wanted to show you there are. And Hume is interesting because it's more emotional. So I would like you to tell Darren a bedtime story, but I'd like Darren to be the hero. Darren likes pirates. He has a dog named Pickles. I make him the hero of the story and tell a 4-minute bedtime story appropriate for Darren, who's an 8-year-old.
So let's set sail for a swashbuckling adventure. Picture this. Darren, the brave young captain, standing on the deck of his trusty ship, the Sea Dog. He's got his faithful companion, Pickles the dog, by his side. Now, what would you like to happen in this tale of high seas?
Interesting, right? So notice, right? I can again, it's not the world's best bedtime story, but it's customized, which means if you're going to write bedtime stories that are generic, in other words, they're not specifically for a child, they have to be pretty good, right? I made this point, like Christopher Nolan can still make crazy movies and he's not going to be worried by AI. But if you're a screenwriter for CSI, AI can crank those out all day, right? In fact, I've been thinking my pet project is to get AI to recreate new episodes of Perry Mason, right? Because there's lots of other ones. It's a formula. There's plenty of visuals, right? So AI can do customized work, which again is a way of raising the bar on generic work, and so that creates a problem. But my point is that that's also I want us to think about what that means for our students and for our teaching. In a lot of ways, this is the fastest change in human writing. So we've seen already, so this study looked at how much of writing is already being produced by AI, and you could see 14% of UN press releases. This is done about 6 months ago. And the consumer complaints one is interesting, right? So this is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and they get about 700,000 complaints a year from citizens complaining about their bank, financial institutions, et cetera. And so this group at Stanford cleverly looked at all of those complaints over years and looked for what percentage of AI writing was coming. And from, right, you have to put your zip code. So they did a zip code analysis. And what they found is interesting. They were surprised. I am not surprised. But they found that AI writing is more widespread in less educated states or less educated regions. They actually did this by zip code. Right, this is rough, but this doesn't surprise me. In the same way that a spell checker, right, when the spell checker arrives, I'm excited because I'm a terrible speller, and all of a sudden my spelling is better without having to do any work. So I am going to be the early adopter of a spell checker because I'm a bad speller. If you're a writer like me, right, so I write pretty fluently. So if I have to write a complaint to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau about my bank, I don't need AI. I'm just going to type. I'm just going to get going, right? So I don't need AI to help me. So, but for less fluent writers, this makes some sense. So again, the first adopters are the people who maybe are not as good at this. But what it means is that the level of writing for financial complaints has gone up. Pardon me. So this is the new C, right? Students can use AI and they can get some work done in the same way a spell checker, right, makes your spelling better, but it doesn't make you a better speller. So we have to do a little bit of work here on how students are using AI. So hit me if you've got another one. But right, so first, students are sorry. There it is. So the thing they're mostly doing is the worst thing, right? They're using it to Google information, right? They're searching for information. As we talked about last time, AI doesn't have a database. It's right. You can now ask AI to search the web, but they were doing this before, right? In fact, now if you use Google, you get an AI summary, but not really the thing AI is best at, unless you're giving it something complicated to do. Like, I want you to search all of these websites for best practices. Some of the things are fine, organizing my schedule, doing a cover letter, great. But summarizing or paraphrasing homework is the big thing. This is now, 2 years out of date. This is the brand new research, and this is going to make you crazy because it makes me crazy, right? Starting papers or projects, are they really telling the truth? Summarizing text, I'm sure they're doing that. Brainstorming creative projects, explore topics, edit writing. You can see the list over there on the left. The one that really scientific research, exam answers, yeah, no surprise. But relationship advice, mental health help. Oh, goodness. So this is the range of things that students are using. This is, again, a brand new survey that just came out. This is one of the tools they're using. This is called Coral AI. It's an API, an application program interface. It's an app that uses ChatGPT, but you can see the interface here is set up for student cheating, right? How it works, lecture notes, academic journal, right? What are the main points? And students are using this and they like it, right? Best productivity tool, upload a PDF, process a 900-page paper, a 900-page book in minutes, right? And sure, these are useful things, but students are using it for shortcuts and for cheating. Students have figured out that you can use it to write in a style, right? Claude actually builds this in. If you go to Claude, you can click on a style and you can upload samples of your writing and it will tell you how you write and it will tell you how to make your writing better. And you can just say, yes, write like that. Right? Or I can just tell it how I want it to write like an academic. Oh, in this case, I want it to write in the style of Harvard professor Marjorie Garber and write an essay about Hamlet. And so I get this, which you can read. But of course, you would immediately spot this as AI writing. Not because it actually sounds like Marjorie Garber's writing, but it's because no student writes this way, right? She sounds like this is the writing of a Harvard academic. And so what you mostly notice when you detect AI use is not the use of AI. You detect the student's writing suddenly got better. And that's a different thing to notice, right? Because there might be other causes. Maybe their mother helped them or their roommate helped them or somebody, right? Or they bought a paper from a Canadian paper mill. It might not be AI, but your assumption is, well, AI is the tool. They probably used AI. We're also seeing this, of course, in math. There are lots of these apps now. You take a picture of the problem, and then it gives you, right? It's supposed to give you hints, which it can, but it can also just give you the answer. And so if you haven't tried Photomath or MathMaster, right, try it on your problem set. You put a written problem set, you take the pictures. And so students have figured this out that they can do that. One of my industrious students was getting asked for his lecture notes. And so he decided, well, I can go one step further. I will take, right, because students would just record the lecture. And so he said, well, you know what, I'll just take a picture of that and I'll upload it into AI. And he has a product called Neurovant, but there are some others like MindGrasp or TurboLearn that are funded by bigger companies. But he just happens to be an SMU student. And right, so he's 19 years old and he figured this out. But now it generates pedagogy. So in some ways, it's like I said, Trevor, this is good, right? Right. Anybody who's still lecturing and just dumping content, this is actually better, right? Study cards, flashcards, a study plan, quiz generators, right? That's not necessarily a bad use of this if you're using it to learn the material. But students are certainly doing this, right? I need 10 ideas. And so, in fact, we'll talk about how to do this in class. They get ideas, then they say, great, that's a great idea. Now write me an outline. And so give me an outline. And so here's an outline. And notice the helpful avoid jargon, be sure to cite your sources. So my question for you is this. If I went to the Writing Center and I got exactly this information, right? I need some ideas for a paper. I need an outline. If the Writing Center provided this level of detail, would it be cheating? How about if a parent provided? But now if it's an AI, does the use of AI itself make it cheating, or is it I don't want you to get an outline from somebody else, right? And so I just ask us to think about that. So I said AI was a C, but in fact at Harvard it's an A. This industrious freshman submitted all AI essays and got mostly A's, right? And even in conflict resolution, the AI invented a conflict with the roommate who was using AI to cheat, which the teacher gave an A, right? We have recent data a few weeks ago from the UK that 92% of students are using it, right? We have lots and lots of data that lots of students are using it. You can't always detect it. So what do you do? So one strategy is I see a lot is we're going to ban it, right? That's not going to stop students, right? Students know it's wrong. They're going to do it anyway. At least that's what they tell us. And in this, the studies, right, how often are they using it, right? These are self-reported, who admits to using it. I do point out that in one of these studies, 80% of students said they were using AI to cheat. And in the same survey, 25% of the students said they lied on the survey. Not sure why. Right? I don't know what that means. So what do you do? Well, we could go back to proctoring. We could go back to oral exams, blue books, surveillance. And look, there's going to be a place for each of these, especially licensure exams, nursing, et cetera. We're going to have exams. I do point out that in Texas, we've had a case of 200 people cheating on the education exam. They sent somebody else to take the exam for them in Houston, and they included a bribe for the proctor. So they were physical exams, right? So there's cheating even when you bring people in to do this. I also don't really want to be a police officer. I wanted to be a teacher. So it's not my favorite strategy, but yes, there'll be a place. So the other thing people do is say, well, we can use a detector, and there are a number of these. The problem is that accuracy varies a lot. Turnitin, I do think, is the best of them at the moment. It does multiple analyses, but as I said, it's better than faculty because you aren't very good at this, right? You can tell a change, but you can't really detect AI. But AI detectors do not accuse students of cheating. They give you a probability score. They tell you a likelihood. It's not plagiarism. So it's not going to hold up in court. You can't go and say, I have proof the student cheated. You do not have proof. So there are a couple of implications of this. One is legally, right? You can't go to court with this. But the other is that if you accuse a student and they say, I didn't do it, you're kind of stuck. But it also means there are false positives, which means you're going to accuse students who absolutely did not cheat. And this is the case where people are really getting screwed. Students are being hurt, but also, right, you don't want to be in one of these lawsuits, right? And so there are lots and lots and lots of these cases. In fact, students now tell us that they're more worried about being accused of cheating than they are caught cheating, which is interesting given that we think most of them are cheating. But this is affecting mental health, et cetera. It's also the case that you can buy a humanizer, right? So for $10 a month, you can now beat your detector. And it's often the same technology and the same company, right? In other words, they're selling it to you to get papers, which they then use to create a detector, a humanizer they then sell back to students and vice versa. So this is a business, right? Look at the language here, right? Advanced humanizer technology, bypass mechanisms, right? This is what students are being bombarded with, right? Harness the power of AI. Students should be free to produce quality content and claim ownership of the results without discrimination. Discrimination against, right? I mean, look at the language. And then, of course, there are paper mills, right? It's a huge industry. It's illegal in Canada. So you're never going to detect that. So we've always had this. This is a business. You're in a race against this. So detectors, here's another right, undetectable AI replicates, right? There's a huge market for this. And so students are being bombarded with ads for all of these things. And there's an arms race, which I don't think the detectors are going to win. At least they're not right now. And I'm sorry, it gets worse. So if you teach online, especially if you teach online asynchronously, you should Google the name of your platform or your browser, right? Your browser like Safari, Chrome, et cetera. But then, right, the tool that you use, Canvas, Blackboard, or McGraw-Hill, whatever you use to give exams. And you will find, and then the word extension, AI answer extension, and you will find a list of tools, often for free, but certainly there are good paid tools, which will then live inside your browser and then will provide answers. And so every couple of days on LinkedIn, somebody posts a video of, I did my homework, I gave it to the, it filled in all the answers. So again, the old problems, here is the problem set, do the problems, or here, especially if it's online, here's an online test. At the moment, that's just not going to work. And I don't think we're going to come back from that. I think that there's just too much money for the pirates. So the other question for you, though, is who's most likely to be let through? And the answer is students who can afford these tools tend to be better educated, have more wealth. etc., they're more likely to be let through. And so you're more likely to catch the poor, unsuspecting first generation student. Do you want to do that? And then there's Grammarly. So Grammarly has been used in a lot of K through 12 situations, and a lot of colleges allow students to use Grammarly. You may have allowed students to use Grammarly. And so look at the copy from Grammarly. Adapt your writing for a variety of audiences. Sounds okay. Using a paraphrasing tool isn't cheating. Yeah, it is actually, but okay, for most of us, right? It's a helpful way to. So this is on their website. This is what they're telling students. And of course, for 7 cents a word, again, who can pay that? A human editor will add clarity, clean up your work. What they're not saying is that that human editor will make it impossible for an AI detector to detect that Grammarly AI was used to write the paper, right? So here's a Grammarly ad. That's not playing, which is okay because it's, but you get the idea, right? Grammarly is a tool. The tagline for this ad is Grammarly helping you connect, right? They're helping you correct, and they cross off correct, and they go, not helping you correct, helping you connect. It's about human relations, right? And students say Grammarly helps me detect, right? Grammarly is working both sides of the street. They're helping you detect plagiarism, but they're also helping the students detect if you will detect plagiarism using their tool. All right. So questions. Let me pause and get some feedback. So what level of collateral damage are you, right? And those false accusations of students. My example is it's like a smoke detector, right? Your smoke detector in your house is useful. But when the smoke detector goes off, do you run out of the house screaming fire and call the fire department? Or do you go into the kitchen to see who's frying something? Right? You know that the smoke detector produces false positives. So that means you adapt the way that you use it. So if you adapt the way that you use it, you can use detectors as a tool to have conversations with students. But you cannot assume that you have data that you can use in an honor court or something like that. So how you use the data, how you apply it is essential. I would actually recommend that you should not allow anybody to use a detector unless you've taken a training course and demonstrate that you know how it works, right? So do you have support structures? So let me stop there. I don't know if some of your campuses are using detectors or departments. Do not use a free detector. They are useless. And if your campus has said they've turned off a detector and you go use a free detector, you're definitely on thin ice, both legally and with students. Questions, thoughts? You can unmute, you can talk to me about detectors and about what students are doing. And then we're going to talk about, I think, a better solution.
I just wanted to add something like I had an experience with a professor, like not from here, as to like from my college back home. But yeah, I remember doing an essay or like a paper where like I didn't really use and like we didn't had an AI back then, right? I'm talking like 2018, 2019, somewhere there. I think it was 18. And I remember where for some reason my professor was against using any sort of like help from outside. And I just used Grammarly was a thing, and I used Grammarly for the first time, and I got a C on that because I admitted that I used Grammarly. So I just like remembered that I just wanted to share. I'm like, okay. And I had incidents where these AI detectors, like someone used them and used the free version, and it kind of did the opposite of what it was supposed to do. And I didn't really share more than what I can. Um, but I am really against using these AI detectors that's like free. So I'm really glad that you were talking about it.
Yeah, you get what you pay for. The free detectors are really, 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 really unreliable. I would never use them. The really good paid ones, Turnitin is I think by far the best at the moment, does give you the chance that you're going to get reasonable information. But again, it's not perfect. It gives false positives. So even with that, you have to be very, very careful. We tell a story in the book about a student who was falsely accused. And so she then used the same tool that the faculty member did. And she took one of the faculty members' publications and ran it through the same detector. It was a publication from before AI, and got back 100% AI generated, and took it to the faculty member and said, so you said I used AI, and you told me which tool you used. Here is your paper, 100% AI from 2010. And the faculty member said, oh, no, it must be in the database. And I said, that's not how AI works. And still took the student to honor court and then lost, of course. But all right, talk about trauma. Thank you for that. Other thoughts, other comments? Has anybody found a way to use? I mean, there are some people who are using detectors, again, they use a good detector. They use it on every single paper. They're honest with students. They talk about it, and then they have a conference with students and say, so it came back with some AI about this paragraph. Can we talk about it? But you have to build trust before you do that. Anybody have an example of a way they've managed this better than I've talked about?
For me, one thing, like the AI, like the free ones, they're always kind of sketchy. And I mean, I think I've tried in past, and I still get really shaky doing it, where I'll try to bring up 6 to 8 free ones and see if there's a pattern there. Because sometimes that helps me out, but I usually have to pair that up with talking to the student just to clarify. And most of the time when someone has AI or there's AI flakes or something, I usually just give them a chance to just revise their paper without any penalty. Because that's my main thing. Or I've been doing a thing too lately, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of students using AI for a lot of my smaller assignments, at least. But I'll notice, I'll have them do a note-taking strategy a while back, and everyone was saying pretty much the same exact thing over and over again. I'm like, okay, this didn't happen a couple years ago. So I think I've also just used AI to actually give prompts to see if that gives me similar results. So I usually have to pair up a few things together. So I never would want to really use AI alone, but yeah, because definitely the free ones like that. So I have to usually pair it up with something if I do use it.
And again, that's a great use of it. But notice that, right, even if all of that evidence was positive, none of it will hold up in court, right? Because it's still probability, right? It's not like plagiarism. With plagiarism, where you can say, here's the original, here is your text. I had a student, true story, who plagiarized from an album cover where I had written the liner notes. And so they came in and it's like, have you ever seen this album? Oh, I said, read it. Does that look familiar? I said, that's your essay. And I said, look at the name on the bottom. And it was like my name. He's like, oops. Yeah, I got you, man. Right? Got you. You plagiarized my own writing as your own. Gotcha. Right? That's why I recognize it. So that's plagiarism. I gotcha. Right? That's illegal. I gotcha. This is not. In fact, the Copyright Office says you can copyright what you produce with AI. Right. So this is a really problematic area. So thanks for those comments. So that's not my suggestion, but I want to make sure that we at least talk a bit about detectors. By the way, I think students, right, the data I showed is that students are cheating. But notice these situations. So this is a recent survey about academic integrity. Right. And this is mostly like deans and leaders who a student receives a writing assignment, asks AI to provide a detailed outline of an appropriate response. The student follows the outline to write the paper. So half of you said that's legitimate. A quarter of you said it was cheating, and a quarter of you weren't sure. So that's a big difference, right? Students, so we're not sure what's cheating. And students are clearly going to be confused about whether or not that's legitimate. So the first thing we've got to do is we've got to start talking to students about this. And I would use the language that I've used today, which is that, right? And by the way, Grammarly is required when you get a job. 1 in 3 Fortune 500 companies in the US require Grammarly. In other words, don't send it to the client unless you've run it through spell checker, right? Most of us would say that's fine. Don't send it to the client unless you've taken care of all those little red lines in Microsoft Word or you've used Grammarly, right? To make sure your grammar is okay. So that's the norm. And again, that's raised standards. So we're going to have to talk to students about, here are the tools, here's the level your writing is going to be expected, and I am going to raise standards. So my strategy that I like the best is that what we call cheating business calls progress, right? And so we have to help students reach that new standard, right? So employers are telling us, right, they want AI skills. 66% won't hire them without them. And what they mean by that is not coding. They mean, can you use AI to make your writing better and faster, right? I have literally a student came to me and said she got a job after she got a business communications degree. She's writing well, so the boss likes her, and the boss says, but your writing is the slowest. I need you to take a night course in business communication to learn how to make your writing better and faster using AI, because it can do the drafts for you, and then you'll edit them and make them better. And if not, we'll fire you because AI can do drafts, and you're just doing drafts. So she goes to this night course, and the professor says, AI is cheating. So she goes back to her boss and says, I'm confused, right? So they're struggling partly because we've confused them, right? There's also, of course, equity and racial gaps here, right? So this is weird, right? So on the one hand, if you look in the middle, right, men are using AI to do homework more than women, right? 84 to 79% using AI chatbots for school is about 8 months old, this data. This survey, and we're not surprised at the bottom that private school kids are using it more than community or junior college, right? That wealth, exposure, okay. But it is interesting that white students at the top are using at least, and Asian American Pacific. I mean, that I don't have any explanation for that data. I just know that we have survey data that says they got different results from different ethnic groups, different gender, different economic situation, maybe. So, and again, I mentioned the Copyright Office. This is the new ruling that came out. There's another one on the way out today, right? But that you can use AI in the process of creation if a human author has sufficient expressive elements. What the heck is sufficient? Right? They haven't defined that. Of course, they're not going to define that. It'll be defined in law. But I am going to use AI to revise the book at some point where we will, here's all my notes. Give me a new draft, track changes so I can approve or disapprove or rewrite these, right? I will have the final say. But man, it's going to save me months of work to just say, scour the internet and find if there's new research about any of these topics and make suggestions for new references. That's a great thing to have AI do. And then I will update the book. So one way to do this is to say to students, I'm raising standards, which students I think do appreciate. And I'm doing it for your good because I love you. And I want you to get a job and have a wonderful life. And if you show up where I don't care if you can't spell anymore. I mean, I do, but at least use a spell checker, right? I've got to make sure. So I can't let anything pass that you're going to send to an employer that has bad spelling mistakes in it because, right, that's just not acceptable anymore. So I have to articulate what's better than AI, right? So here's the level that if you can do this level of work, it's no longer good enough. You have to be able to do better than that. You have to be an expert, right? So by the way, this image, right, this is an AI image. Do you think that doesn't look like a photograph, right? I mean, the standard is now maybe better than a C. It's pretty high. But for writing, at least, and I've done. I won't put that in the chat in a minute. Right, I have them. You can have them watch this video and say, okay, here is how much better could this video be that if a human did it rather than just AI. So here is a rubric that you see on the screen. This is an old rubric that, right, the average here. Right, 70%. That's the old, this is my old C. So you can see the old C. Some evidence may be missing, unrelated, or vague. Clear introduction, but the paragraphs, some of them need to be more focused. The writing is clear, but the sentence structure is simple or repetitive, right? That's a C in the old days. So my new rubric looks like this. I've taken that, I call that AI level, and I've set it an F, right? The writing, right? It's exactly the same rubric, but now that's an F, which means that I've had to rethink what an A looks like, right? So the A is a keen sense of the author's voice, and writing conveys passion. A variety of strong, concrete, and appropriate evidence with support for every claim, right? So this, my rubric had to get more specific and had to better articulate what is better than AI level work. And now I only accept better than AI level work. Does that make sense? Right. So one strategy is to say, here's the new standard. You have to do better, which is tricky because, of course, some of our students were not meeting the old standard. But it means that that rubrics could, right? What you have to do a better job of defining what better looks like. By the way, AI can help with this. But I suggest that you, right, do a rubric on the website, right? So here's a prompt to help have AI help you do this. But there's a rubric bot that is listed on my website. That again, the same. You can go to the prompts down to rubrics, and there's a bot that will do this for you. So I also work with students on the rubric. So one of the things I do is I say I had AI produce good, bad, and ugly papers on the same prompt. And then I had students grade them using the rubric and then refining the rubric and said, so if we want AI level to be the baseline, right, which of these things is better? And then the students graded the papers. And again, I thought they kind of practiced editing, right? They practiced evaluating, which is a skill I want them to have. Rather than writing, I want them to write too, but editing is in some ways, right? You can now produce quality press releases or marketing or proposals for the NSF without having to write a draft. You have to be able to edit it, but you don't have to have great English language skills, right? There's some opportunities here. So if you really want them to write without AI, there are a couple of tricks, right? AI is not as good at live local, right? So let's have a class debate. Let's write about what we talked about in class. Outright AI doesn't know that yet, although if they take a thing with their phone, they can take a recording, et cetera. But right, firsthand research, physical sources in the library that don't exist on AI, right? There are some things that you could do. Students do like peer work. I mean, they don't love it, but they put in a little more effort if they know a peer is going to read something. So if I say, identify 3 distinct passions of yours, imply they're doing a problem, interview the person next to you and write a biography of the person next to you, right? I could have AI do some work there, but I want it to be good. I just talk to you, right? So that those sorts of assignments can give students a little bit more motivation to do those things. There are also these collaborative tools like Perusall, right? And if you vary them with text, images, other kinds of things, students are using AI to do the simple stuff like this. But if it's low stakes and they do a lot of them and you explain what the real purpose is, which is to understand the material, they're less likely to cheat. So social annotation tools aren't going to solve the problem, but they have a place. But here's another example of a writing assignment, right? Actually, this is a reading assignment, right? So here's an article about AI. I want you to read this article, and I want you to identify all of the hyperbole, all of the unjustified claims, right? Where are the places where deep-sounding terms are used, but they don't really mean anything, right? So I give them a list of sort of rhetorical strategies. I say, and again, it's about AI, which they care about. And then we could talk about why AI writing might, be or not be what people think it's going to be. This is by far my favorite technique for getting students to write. So writing is a bunch of different things that students don't think of. They think it's just writing, right? In fact, I start by saying, so we're going to do a writing assignment this week. What are the parts? If I said I want you to write a 3 to 5 page paper, what are the parts? Oh, I got it right. Okay. Editing. Yay, editing. Anything else? Maybe feedback comes up. Research, if I'm lucky. Thinking never gets mentioned. So I say, okay, what about thinking? Oh yeah, thinking. Okay, so I say, so look, let's try a couple of different experiments. Let's write the first paragraph of this assignment. So I want you to right now take 5 minutes and write me a paragraph. And here's the assignment. And the assignment is like a 5-page paper on X. They write for 5 minutes, free write. Now I say, okay, now what I want you to do is to go to an AI and I want you to try some of these prompts. Give it the assignment and say, give me some innovative ways I might approach this, right? Give me an idea that I could use, and here's the kind of student I am, right? Give me a new way to think about this. Give me a killer opening, right? And I give them a whole series of prompts to say, stimulate your creativity with AI, okay? And then I have them write. I say, so now take one of those ideas and now write another paragraph yourself, and I watch them do this. Okay, great. Now you have 2 paragraphs. Take one of those paragraphs, and I want you to get feedback. So I want you to give it to the AI, but here's the prompt I want you to ask. Tell me what somebody from the other political party might say about this. Give me the counter argument, right? How could I make this more persuasive? How could I make this funnier? How can I make this a better, more gripping opening, right? Don't do the work for me, but tell me how I could restructure this to make this more engaging for the reader. And I give them a series of prompts. And I say, so now AI is giving you some feedback. Third time, rewrite the paragraph. Rewrite the paragraph from scratch. And by the way, this is a great example of when I have them do it by hand and not on a computer, right? Because now it's just, they can't edit it in the same way that you can in a Word document. They have to start over, which actually means you're more likely to start over because you have to write it all out anyway. You don't just copy the sentences. Then I say, okay, now, 4th time. Now what I want you to do is I want you to just ask the AI to write a paragraph for you. And now you will have 4. So they do that. So now let's evaluate, how did AI work in each stage, right? What did AI do? And did it help you or hurt you? Did it make it better? And they often say, yes, AI helped. I say, so which of these 4 paragraphs is the best paragraph? And they almost universally say the 4th one, the one AI did, because it's a better writer than they are. I say, okay, so in which of the 4 processes did you learn the most? And why might it be useful? So I have to really dig in on this. I have to say, what did you learn? How might this be? How did you know the 4th paragraph was best? Right? How did you know? What made it better? And we talk about that. So this leads to another kind of assignment. And then I have them do the assignment for a week. Another version of this, and I might do this the next week, I say, so let's have AI write the whole essay. So I say, here's the prompt, write me a 3-page essay about X. And then I want you to copy and paste the entire essay into a version tracker. Microsoft Word, track changes on will work. And then I want you to make the essay better. So what I want you to do is to read the essay and I want you to make changes. But every time you make a change over in the comments, I want you to say, why is that better? Right? Is that the place the comma goes? Did it improve clarity? Did it make the sentence similar? Did it vary? I mean, we talk about what are some ways that you could make this better? Because again, that process of editing, remember, I'm trying to raise standards. I want their writing to be better. So this is, again, they struggle with this, right? Especially the less good writers, but they start to get better. And again, the more we talk about, well, how could you make this sentence more elegant? They're now talking they're not used to doing it. They're used to saying, well, how do I just make this sentence work? I don't know what I need to say, right? And so we're talking about higher level writing. And then I actually sometimes say, well, try to reprompt it. Could you change your prompt to make the original essay better and then compare the 2 and tell me which is better? That's actually pretty complicated. And then describe for an employer what value you added to the process, which they really get, is that's what you're going to be asked in an interview. You need to be able to articulate that. So I mentioned Word, but Google Docs does this. But it turns out there are lots of tools that will do this, right? Rumi is good. Lex.page is my favorite. I mean, the truth is that both Turnitin and Grammarly now have versions of this where you write there and they track the changes. So there are lots of ways to get them to do this. So process assignments. Another one is reverse outlining. So I say, okay, your paper is due Monday, but I don't want you to turn it. I want you to bring it to class on your computer. They come to class and I say, everybody has a paper. It's due now. But wait, first, what I want you to do is I want you to upload the paper into this AI, and I want you to ask it for a reverse outline, which is a prompt like the one you see on the screen, right? Create an outline summarizing the main point of each paragraph with one sentence. And I want you to read the outline the AI has produced and tell me, is that what you thought you said? I give them a few minutes and they write. So then I say, now try this. Now ask the AI, how could you make your writing more persuasive? How could you make it more focused? I want you to tell the AI, what did you want to say? What is it you thought your essay was about? And then if it's not what the AI told you, right, then what's the gap? And so at the end of 20 minutes, 100% I say, could the essay be better? 100% say yes. I say, so great, you have until Wednesday to make it better. It's actually due on Wednesday, right? But the point is, I'm raising every one of these exercises is a way to raise the standards of their writing. Yes, you can use AI to help you, but if you use AI, it has to be better. So here's a final example of this. This is called Persuasion Impossible from Kara Allison at University of Virginia. And so she says, pick a persuasive task that feels impossible or hard, right? Convincing your roommate who voted for the other guy that he was wrong. Convince, right, whatever. Find a really difficult persuasive task. Now, how would you quantify success, right? Are you going to convince them they voted for the wrong person? Whatever. Now, work with AI to solve this as a writing task, right? So, in other words, could I write an essay? Could I create it? Could I marshal enough evidence? What do I need to know? But notice, again, the point is, can you use AI to make yourself more persuasive? And the answer is yes, because AI is more persuasive, right? So these are all assignments that raise the bar, right? And help students do better work. Another version of this from Jeannie Law is, right, and this is her bot that she uses, right, that to help, she talks about, she wants students to be authentic first, technical second, right? So I want you to focus mostly on the ideas. What is it you want to say? Who is the you in there that you want to get out, right? We will then come back and work on the technical aspects of writing, but her approach is to use the AI mostly for those ideas that I talked about, right? How can AI, and again, she's done something we will come back to a lot in the third session, which is creating a custom bot. Because if you use this bot, I will also drop this in the chat. If you use this bot, right, it won't give you the answer. It will help you, but right, it has instructions. And so one of the advantages of using a custom bot is that you can then say to students, okay, I need you to use my bot. And if you use something like Boodlebox, again, I'll give you some examples, then right, the student has to use your bot rather than the one that will do the work for them. So that's another way to get them to do writing. All right, one more, and then I'm going to think of your questions. So this is from, and I love that I have all these examples from various people doing great work. And this is from Josh Anthony at Gonzaga. And so he noticed that, right, if I ask an AI to produce the first paragraph of Mrs. Dalloway, it can't get it exactly right. It gets it close, right? And the more obscure author, the better this assignment works. It works less well with Jane Austen or Shakespeare. But pick somebody a little more obscure that's not quite so prevalent on the internet, right? Because if you ask it to produce the Constitution, it can, just because there's so many versions of We the People, right? So reproduce a text by an author or a paragraph. Analyze the result, refine the prompt. In other words, you do textual analysis. Is it the voice? Is it style, tone? Is it the meaning of the text? Is it the word choice? What is it about this that isn't quite like the author I want it to be? And then students have to revise. So it's a great way to get students to do textual analysis, old-fashioned, deep reading or close reading, right? There is a problem though. And so the problem here, okay, I'm going to have to show this. Must have set up something wrong. Okay. Sound for this. Okay, so it's taken a minute. All right, so this is an example. It's taking a minute to load. Why is it taking so long? Anyway, okay, so what this is doing, maybe it's too depressing to watch anyway. So this is a tool called OpenAI's Operator. There it is. Okay, so you'll see that what happens is you see the prompt. I want you to write a paper in Google Docs with version tracking turned on, and I want you to write this essay at human speed. And then this professor plops in the prompt, and you can see that what's happening, right? So the AI goes to Google Docs. It asks the person to sign in because it can't sign, just know your password. And so this is called an agent. So it's doing work. This is how it's also doing the homework. right? So it creates a document, it adds some questions, and you have it then says, when you're ready, tell me. It goes, great. It goes back to the Google Doc. And so now it's going to write your paper, the paper that you have assigned. It's been given that. But instead of writing it in chat that you have to copy and paste, it actually, and this is sped up about 10 times, right? So it then writes now at human speed, which means it will type, it will change the font, right? There's its font change. It will backspace. It will do things like a human, right? And so it starts to write the paper, and he's right. So he's writing. I'm not controlling the deck. So this is just the AI writing an essay at human speed, which when it gets turned into you will look like it was written over 3 days, because it was written over 3 days, but the AI did the writing, not the student. So again, when I talk about an arms race, I don't think we're going to win, right? I really do think that these things are coming to get us. And so that doesn't mean that these assignments are bad. It just means that you also have to pair them with more discussions about what we're actually trying to learn. Sorry. Is anybody super depressed now? I'm sorry. I know that. So one more of these things. So my suggestion is that you try writing with Lex. So Lex is an AI writing tool. It's better than Grammarly. It's better than Microsoft Word in my view. But right, when you write with Microsoft Word, I would argue that your writing has been altered because Microsoft Word makes you think ultimately about the format, the font, the spacing, all those tools. And that's not really helping your writing, right? It's helping the printing. But Lex was designed as an AI tool from the ground up. And so it asks for things like, do you want to do a check for cliches, for brevity, for citations? Would you like help with paragraph transitions, right? Do you want me to flag confusing parts, right? Microsoft Word doesn't flag the confusing parts. It flags the grammatical errors, right? So this is going to change writing, I think. And so I would experiment with it. By the way, this is one of those that also tracks changes, like I mentioned. Yes, it can be hacked by an AI agent, but I would see if this improves your writing, and then try, that'll give you an insight into how you might help students. But Lex.page is something that will, I think, change your writing. So ultimately, you're going to need a policy. Well, let me stop there. Are there questions about any of those assignments? Anything that sounds too good to be true? Things you're still worried about before I get to policy?
Well, I'll just throw in a comment. I would have never thought to program an AI tool to write at human speed. Just started laughing when you brought that up.
And to write in a document, right? And so,
Exactly.
so two things have happened. One is the agents have gotten better, right? If you didn't see, Manus came this week, so Manus does this. This is a new agent from China. So I don't think the perception of these is widespread. I think students haven't yet figured it out. But trust me, once a student does this and says, "Hey, let me show you how I can do this paper," right? It will spread like wildfire. Other thoughts or comments? So next time we'll talk about other kinds of assignments, but I do think what I talked about today, right? Ways to get students to write with or without AI is still possible, but we have to think carefully about how to do that. So you do need a policy, right? So students say mostly you don't have a policy. We did a survey, we did a couple of focus groups a few months ago in January, and students said, yeah, they don't have a policy. So again, the 69% was replicated in our focus group. But when we asked them, they said, that's okay. We're okay with no policy. I said, why? I said, well, it's kind of like don't ask, don't tell, I said, explain. I said, then the students universally, every single student said, well, if you don't say anything about AI, then I think it's okay, right? You can't then come back and say, oh, I told you not to use AI, because you didn't. So the fact that most of you are not explicitly having a policy, students interpret that as don't ask, don't tell, right? Which they think is okay. So they're actually, we thought, oh, they're going to be unhappy that you don't have a policy. And it turns out they love you're not having a policy, because it means they think anything goes. Sorry. So here's the elements that a policy needs, right? When is AI use permitted, or is it forbidden, and why? That's important. Do students have to share their prompts? They have to tell you how they used it? How should they credit it? I think you should be as transparent as possible. I think you should say exactly what AI did. But a warning about the limits, right? AI gets things wrong, it hallucinates, et cetera. Be careful. If you're going to use a detection tool, you should say both, here it is, you should show them the detection tool, you should show them your method, and you should tell them how you're going to use that information, because I think that will lower the tension. And if you're not going to use it, I think that's even better. But then most important in my view is a statement that you are ultimately responsible and accountable for the work. Right? So the lawyers that are getting in trouble with AI, it's not because they're using AI. It's because the AI is making up stuff, and then the judge says this isn't a real case, right? This is bad work. If your intern made up cases, you'd fire the intern, right? So the problem is not the AI. The problem is the work is bad. So I would say to students, you are responsible. Check this work, because if it's wrong, and this is happening at companies, people are having them sign, you are accountable. I certify this work is correct. Not I certify I did this work, because the boss doesn't care that you did the work. The boss wants to know, is the work accurate? Is this analysis of stocks, of real estate, of whatever, new products, is it reliable? Did you check it? Are these sources real? If you can say yes and you use AI to speed up your work, I'm thrilled as a boss, right? I had one of my clients said to me yesterday, he said, the interns used to take a week or a month to do, an analysis. We have a new CEO. What do you think that'll do to the stock, et cetera, et cetera? It's a financial company. And now it's like it takes an hour. I want better work, but I want it in an hour. And my intern can do a lot more work. Interesting. But I want to make a pitch for starting with why, right? Many of us think of policy as the what, but the policy is also the why. So for example, if I meet this guy at a party and I say, hey, what do you do? And he says, I'm a home chef. He's told me what he does. Meh, not that interested. But if I say, what do you do? And he says, well, you know how families often don't eat together? I come to your home and I make healthy meals that bring families together. That is a much better introduction, because notice he told me why what he does is important, right? So here's my policy. Not interested. Here's why this matters to you, right? And the model here is fitness coaches, right? Fitness coaches are constantly talking benefit, about why you have to do more, about why the pain needs to be there, a little discomfort, right? This is when the benefit starts. When the minute you want to come out of the pose is when it stops, right? I say to my students a lot of things I first heard in fitness class, right? I am here to help you exceed the limits that you set for yourself, right? I want you to engage the burn. When it starts to be uncomfortable, that's when the learning starts, right? So and fitness coaches say this all the time. So read my sample policy. This is just one sample. If you're on a phone and can't read, put it in the chat and I'll read it, but I'm assuming you can see the screen. Where does the policy start? I would argue that the policy doesn't start till the third bullet, the third paragraph. The first two paragraphs are not a policy. They're a why, right? But they're critical to getting students to say, aha, that is why writing is prohibited. I will go along with that and not cheat, right? The motivation is critical. It's not just here's the policy, it's why. Here's another policy. Same question to you. When does the policy start? The policy is the last sentence. But the meaning, the motivation is in the first two paragraphs. Notice that what I'm trying to do is activate values, right? This is generally true, that people are much more likely to change their behavior if they believe that the behavior supports a set of values. So if I start with integrity, not academic integrity, but integrity, right? Everybody here seen a movie? What happens at the end of a movie? Credits. Why? Why do we have credits? It's important to acknowledge the work that people did. Students are 100% behind that. I say, great. So how does that apply in class? Should you take credit for somebody else's work? Why not? Well, integrity, right? Should you take credit for somebody else's idea? Right? Does it make you less of a person if your movie has lots of credits? No. Does it make you, right? So giving credit, so we talk about this and then I say, so let's disclose all of our AI use and let's figure out a form that we can use to do that. And this is what a form like that might look like, a disclosure agreement, right? If I did all the work on my own without any assistance, no spell checker, no technology, no writing center, no friends, great. Or I did this, but I got help from, and so tell me who you got help from, your parents with PhDs, a spell checker, a thesaurus, right? Most people will say, I don't need to use a dictionary. I don't need to acknowledge that I used a dictionary or a thesaurus. But I put it here because once we start having the conversation, I say, so let's start by using because right, a dictionary is intellectual work that somebody else did on your behalf, right? They did it, and you can now use this because other people slaved away at it. So let's start with, and then later we can say we don't need to reference that, but it gets people to realize, oh, all of the ideas, this work, the cinematographer, whatever it is, right? And then there's some clearly more problematic ones. But, and I say this is not going to be graded. In fact, you can make this anonymous. I let students say, you have to turn this in, but it will not be attached to you, but I will look at it in aggregate. I mean, so lots of ways to do this, but this is a way to start that conversation about what are we using, whose intellectual property are we using, or intellectual work are we using, and when does it cross the line? Because the truth is, the line has changed, right? Spell checkers were forbidden by a lot of us, right? Paraphrasers, right? Grammar checkers, now standard in Word. Clearly, Chegg is cheating, but is AI-assisted writing the new norm? I think it might end up being. Other people use this kind of spotlight, right? Red, yellow, green, the traffic lights. You can use it here, but you can't use it there. There's actually fairly complicated versions of this, right? You can see on the left, no AI use to full AI use, and then everything in between. And then you explain to students what they are. And you say, well, this is a number 1 assignment. This is a 3 assignment. Here's why. I don't actually think that you really need to have this much of a traffic light. I just think you need to explain to students, for this assignment, here's what you can do. And for that assignment, here's what you can't do, whatever. And we do it. I think it's assignment by assignment. I do worry that students will get confused because they have 3 different classes and 3 different policies. But I think that's why explaining, well, here's what we're trying to learn. If students know what they're trying to learn, it's easier to follow the policy, right? I want you to make a home-cooked meal. I want you to use fresh vegetables because fresh vegetables are more nutritious than using this prepared product at the grocery store, right? If I just said, don't use that, well, why not? Oh, here's why, right? The why does matter. Questions about policy. What are you doing? I've put some examples here, both of university policies. I'm not a huge fan unless they're pretty generic. I think the university policy should be every assignment needs a policy. right? Every department, every faculty, at some level, it needs to be more local, at least department level. But there are lots of policy examples. There's a new one from Penn State that's on my website and in the list of the citations. Questions about policy? Do we like this? What's the problem? Do we hate this? Do you have a better idea? You're making me lonely.
I can't see any issues with this stuff. Here, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Well, thank you.
I think, yeah, I think our college is trying to draft up an AI thing, but part of me likes the idea here of like maybe if there can be like different levels for, or I think it makes me think that I need to define how to be okay with using AI, the level of AI for some things there, but it can get confusing if students are looking at different classes all the time too. But yeah, it made me think about a few things there.
Good. I mean, I do think that, right, there's going to be a difference between freshmen and seniors, right? You may want your freshmen to do things without a calculator or a spreadsheet, but it would be absolutely irresponsible for your seniors, right? Yeah, I might want to send my freshmen to go look things up in the library, but it would be irresponsible for my seniors to not graduate knowing how to use a spreadsheet to do accounting, to use a tax program, to use a database that does research, right? Consensus, right? Those sorts of things. So it may be that, right, we're going to allow you to use the calculator then, but not now. And so that's why I think it's unavoidable, because I think eventually we're all going to have to be teaching some version of AI writing. Other comments, thoughts? The point about lots of policies, I think, is a very real concern that I have. What about this policy? So the question for you, this is about calculators. When do you think this statement was made from the National Association of Educators for Mathematics? 1975, right? The calculator was really still pretty new, and they said they're all going to have to learn how to use calculators. Don't forbid it. And of course, at that point, parents and teachers were mostly on the forbid it, take the calculator, and they're talking about second grade, which is interesting. So another way, so Sarah Eaton is doing really interesting work on this, and so she has written a book on redefining plagiarism. And so she says, what happens when human hybrid AI writing becomes normal, which she does predict. I think she's probably right. Again, I showed you those statistics at the top of the hour, where it's already, right, 14% of UN press releases. It's already, 30% of various, right? So this could, right, make us better writers. Human creativity could be enhanced, yes. The language thing is interesting because one of two things could happen. One is that, okay, they're all trained on English. They're actually better in English than they are in other languages. It's certainly not as good in Spanish, ChatGPT, as it is in English. Try it. Try the same prompt in both languages, and no. So one thing you could say, well, you know what, everybody has to now speak English, and forget about it. The other thing, though, is that, well, wait a second. If I have an instant translator, if I can translate everything I read into English instantly, then I can speak Hawaiian or Gaelic at home, right? I don't need to learn English. Maybe, right, this will be a boon to local languages. I don't know, but I do think it's reducing language barriers. I used it on a trip to Doha. I used my phone. I just translated menus. Right? I didn't, because normally I would try to learn a little bit, enough to be able to read the menu or something, right? Arabic is hard, right? Because the alphabet's so different. But I didn't worry about. I tried. I just used my app. It was so easy. I talked to people in shops. It was just, the app was just so easy. Humans can relinquish control, but not responsibility. Attribution remains important. But certainly number 6, we've got, right, historical definitions of plagiarism no longer apply, right? It's not, using an AI is not plagiarism. So last thing, I think it's useful to know why students cheat. So any ideas, right? What are the top reasons students cheat? You can put them in the chat. What are the top reasons that students cheat? There's a lot of them. There's a couple that rise to the top. Any suggestions? Why do students, what are the top reasons students cheat? Anybody? Can you all get to the chat? No? You're not all driving, are you? Yes. Yes, time. Yes. Fear of failing. It's easy. Absolutely. These are good. Great. All right. So we have 50 years of data on this, and you don't understand these right exactly. So here they are. So number one is academic pressure, right? Lack of time, too much to do at once. So in other words, if your LMS has assignments automatically due at midnight and they're all due at midnight, that will increase cheating, right? So vary the time. My assignments are due at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, right? Vary the time, because if they're all due at midnight, at a quarter to midnight, students will start to cheat. In fact, I had a really interesting group of medical students at the University of Chicago said, we're going to medical school. We don't want to cheat, but everything is due at the same time. And so at a quarter to the hour, I want to go to medical school. I don't want to fail. So I use AI when I run out of time. Competition also is very key. Opportunity, AI makes it easier to cheat. And so now there's just an easy way to do it. But the one that's you have most control over is actually lack of motivation, which ends up being the top one, especially for AI use, right? If I'm taking a general ed course or a course that I don't think is relevant, right? So they call this degree apathy. Degree apathy is the number one reason students use AI, right? Because this doesn't matter. I don't actually have to learn this. I just need, right? We have made this transactional. Part of why I want us to focus more on process is because when it's transactional, there's more cheating, right? When I say the process, right? If all I have to do is give you 50 push-ups, I'll hire somebody else to give you 50 push-ups. But if the 50 push-ups benefit me and only I can do them, right? Only the person who does the push-ups gets the benefit, right? So explaining why matters, right? So again, I said these things, I learned all of these in fitness class, right? The benefit happens where the discomfort happens. I love nothing grows in the comfort zone. I say this at least once a class. Students are sick of it, but man, it does focus, right? Nothing grows in the comfort zone. I've heard that in yoga class for years, and it's true in writing, right? You've got to be a little uncomfortable. Right? You mentioned stress, absolutely. But I point out that notice that competition and stress, it's not really about grades, it's about getting a job, right? It's not about learning the material. It's not like, I got to learn this material. No, it's I've got to pass this course or I won't get a job. So that narrative is partly our fault. Not entirely, of course, but we can try to shift the narrative to say the process of learning is going to be beneficial to you. So some easy things that you can do. Talk about integrity, not academic integrity, integrity. Give an integrity quiz, right? What does integrity mean, right? Why are credits useful? Why is this not? One that you probably haven't thought of is allow students to withdraw submissions for the next 24 hours or give them like 12 hours to reconsider. And I was surprised at this. There's a study from UC Riverside that shows that 10% of students actually withdrew submissions. And so what he discovered was, right, it's a quarter to 12, the assignment is due at 12. I cheat because I have to get it in. And then I regret cheating. So if you give me 24 hours more, then I withdraw my submission. Or you just say, you know what, you might get caught cheating. I don't want to get caught cheating, and so I'll take the F, I get withdrawn. And so students will actually, 10% withdrew. This is in a computer science course. So the other thing that I do to deal with the workload and the flexibility issues is I say, look, these are the deadlines, but you get 4 of these passes. I'm going to give each of you 4 12-hour passes. You can use them one at a time, 4 times 12 hours, or you can use them all at once, right? You get a 2-day extension on one assignment. And I do this, and this is what I tell them, because in the workplace, this is how it works. You cannot be late all the time and keep your job, right? You have to meet deadlines. But unless you work for a jerk, and you might, but if you work for a normal human being, you will occasionally be able to submit something late with a good reason. I'm not even going to ask you for a reason. I'm just going to give you these 4 things. But the point is, I give you some flexibility. Students really appreciate this. I give you some agency and control. That's highly motivating, right? So that's another way to get students, and actually these reduce cheating, right? Remind them about integrity right before it's handed in, right? Not before, right before they're about to hand it in. Say, remember, you said integrity was important. Remember, these are the tools we have. I also normalize help, right? Lower stakes assignments that happen more often. Talk to students about workloads, right? How is it going? I try doing a word cloud during midterms week, right? Everybody, here's a QR code on the screen. Tell me how you're feeling, and look at what it says, and then say, so how could I help with the stress, anxiety, burnout, right? Which is what you're going to see, right? Well, maybe the midterm, give us an opportunity to take it later, whatever, right? That shows you care. That will increase motivation, right? The famous paper called "If You Don't Care, I Don't Care." Right. So one of the things we have to do is I talked about why. So I wrote this book, Teaching Change. I know it's too long. 700 pages is more than anybody wants to read, but I'll summarize it in 6 words, right? Because I was talking about intrinsic motivation, right? So the summary of psychology, right? What makes people do the work? Engagement, optimism, and agency. In other words, do I care, right? I care about climate change. I care about this assignment. I'm more willing to do it. Can I do it, right? If something's too hard, it doesn't matter how much I can't do it. I can't stand on my head in my handstand. I can't do that, right? Agency. If I do it, it will matter. I will get the bet. But all 3 of these things have to be activated. So as a teacher, your mantra should be, I care, I can, I matter. When students feel those 3 things, they will do the work. So I have a bot, it's on my website, that will help you create assignments that will motivate, I care, I can, I matter. That will stimulate that. Can I make this assignment more motivating to students? And the answer is yes, you can. I have a bot that will help you do that. The details of that are here, right? Make sure there's why. Even just one sentence of why increases motivation, right? There's a great study on read chapter 2 for Tuesday versus read chapter 2 and write down your favorite quote on an index card. Read chapter 2 and find a bias you think the author has. Read chapter 2, find a relative you think this would help. Adding one sentence of why increases retention significantly than just read chapter 2. So if your syllabus says read chapter 2 for Tuesday, you're missing an opportunity, right? How will you be able to use this? Why is this important? And then when you give homework, clarity is essential. What is the task? What am I actually asking to do? My daughter famously, texted me about, oh my God, I spent all Sunday doing this homework. I said, what's the assignment? She says, 50 different ways to sell soap. How many do you have? 6. I said, well, 6? You spent all day on this? Oh, I know. I said, did he say 50 good ways? No. So he just wants 50 different ways, right? You're not going to use all 50 ideas. He's just looking for one good idea and 49 crappy ones. So stop editing and just start vomiting on the page. And it was like, really? I said, yeah, that's what he wanted, right? So what's the process? How am I going to do this? Are there mistakes that might happen? Do I have to do it all in one sitting, right? Those are things that are obvious to you because you're weird. You like school so much, you're still here, right? And then, am I on the right track? Right? What's the rubric, examples, etc. So again, I have a bot that will help you do this, but this has nothing to do with AI. It has to do everything with this, right? Start with why, sell the cookie. The best way to reduce cheating is to help students understand why this matters and how it will benefit them, right? Not something we're used to doing because again, we're weird. We didn't need this, right? So policies and assignments also need to talk about why. So here's one of my examples. This is an example that I don't get because I hate superhero movies, but I know that they're big. So this metaphor is, do you want to be the hero of your story, or do you want AI to be the hero and you will be the sidekick, right? So is it okay for AI to be the sidekick? Sure, but I want you to be the hero. And again, that language sounds artificial to me because I don't get it, but I know that my students resonate with, I literally get this on the course evaluations. I wanted to be the hero. And that was the first time I really understood that using AI was taking away my agency. I want to be the hero. I want to have a voice. But AI is a great sidekick. So how can we use AI as a sidekick? But you want to stay in control, right? So I mentioned this bot. So this is my prompt version. This is on the website. It's a prompt that will help you take your assignments and add the motivation, add real world examples, et cetera. So I test all of my assignments with this prompt. And again, I have a bot that does this as well. But you can read there that, right, it just does what I just said. It's the summary of the previous book. There, oh, there's the bot. If you want to use the bot, there's a code you have to use once you use that. Questions? That's a lot. And I talked about the yellow book, so that's why that's there, the Teaching Change book at the end. Questions, thoughts? Next time, we will talk about assignments that can only be done with AI, video, images, but especially we're going to talk about custom bots, because I think our future is in designing assignments that are actually bots. I'm going to give you, here is the bot, like the bot I just showed you. That's a bot that will help you do something. It won't give you the answer. Actually, that bot kind of will. But when I give them to students, it's a bot that doesn't give them the answer. But students have to work through the bot. The bot then grades them, dumps it in the grade book. But it's a module that will help you learn something. And so we'll talk a lot about custom bots and using them as a way to create new kinds of assignments. It's a lot easier than you think it is. You can often take your assignment, put it in the bot, and then say, make up new problems for each student, evaluate them, make it easier when they get stuck, et cetera, et cetera. And students can't cheat because they have to actually use your bot. So we'll do that next time. But other questions about cheating and policy or the writing assignments I talked about today?
Dr. Bowen, you've been fantastic. 90 minutes, just straight on, great stuff. Appreciate it very much. If anybody else has any questions, put your hand up, or otherwise, just a note. The last of the 3-part series is April 7th from 2 to 3:30 on AI assignments and assessments. As Dr. Bowen mentioned, we are recording this session. We'll have it available on the DDA website. If you need access to the URL for that, just let me know and we'll send it out. Anybody have any questions, Dr. Bowen?
I know you're there because you put things in the chat.
Fantastic stuff. This has been well worth 3 hours so far. I'm looking forward to the last 90 minutes. This has been great. Well, nobody has any questions. We're on spring break this week, so I think our crowd is down just a little bit. I didn't think about that when we scheduled it in, and so I think there's some faculty that are probably taking a much needed rest, and otherwise I think our crowd numbers will be up next time around, just because everybody will be back on campus. So we'll make sure we get the marketing communications out there so we can get a full slate of people on board.
Great. I look forward to that. I appreciate everybody showing up during spring break. That's amazing. I won't tell you it's 80 degrees in Dallas today. I mean, I did. Oops, sorry.
Yep. Well, most of our snow is gone, and it's supposed to get to be 60 tomorrow, but they're talking snow for the weekend. So we're not completely out of the woods in North Dakota yet. So.
All right. Great.
All right, sir. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.